So, Swardy,
So Neil,
since you are a musician,
yeah,
what are your thoughts on AI?
it's complicated.
All right, what's so complicated about it?
Uh, it just feels really early. Like, yeah, like it would be fun to answer this question and then answer it again, not in like a year, but in like 4 weeks or something.
It's so true, huh?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I like that.
yeah. It
In
just almost
4
feels,
weeks.
yeah, it's like it's almost irrelevant. But for now, uh, it's definitely touching every part of the creative process, and then
Uh-huh.
also every part of the branding and marketing process, and
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I guess you got to be more specific, right? So we know it's affecting people's voices, and we know it's gonna affect the way that people generate beats.
Yeah.
And yeah, certainly all graphic design, branding, promotion, all of that is super affected. But yeah, I think like without getting into if I feel positively or negatively about it, I would say it's super going to have a big effect on every aspect of it.
Yeah.
People are going to be using it for every part of making and selling music. Um, what I'm excited about
Okay.
is the artists who show us something that we haven't seen or some sound that we've never heard before. And so, yeah, sometimes that question kind of comes with like the follow up, which is like, are you worried about jobs? And I am,
Okay.
but I also think that like in the hands of a super skilled artist who's not afraid to sort of fuck around with whatever tools are at
Yeah.
their disposal. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what comes.
Who would be an artist you think would fuck around with them that might just surprise us all?
Well, I mean, we don't even have to guess, right? I mean, Porter Robinson has a Vocaloid, a synthesized voice based on his voice, which I don't know how they build those things. I assume there's some uh, AI process in there. Maybe not. Maybe it's all manual,
Okay.
but I doubt it. And so we can literally today listen to music with his synthesized vocals. Um, but yeah, I think I'm excited to I'm excited to experiment.
Yeah.
And uh, yeah, I assume that just like every sort of new democratized tech tool that affects music,
Yeah.
that there will be like a bunch of sort of annoying sound alike stuff as everybody sort of plays with like I don't know, like the party tricks.
Yeah.
And then like off in the corner will be somebody super hard at work making some shit that we've never heard before that like blows all of our minds. And then it becomes clear again that it's not a cheat code. It's just a new tool that somebody else is going to be better than you at.
So you see it being more of a as a creator tool, or you're hoping
Yeah.
that it's more of a tool for creators as opposed to or musicians and
Yeah,
artists.
which doesn't mean I don't also think that there's like a super important conversation about ownership and IP and copyright and all that. But yeah, I feel like I feel really separately about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just so we can date this because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
said 4 weeks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it is February 22nd
Mm,
of 2024 is
right.
when we're having this conversation.
Right. So
So
should we check back in a couple hours?
because if this
Yeah.
so it's already past 4 weeks,
Right.
but it'll be so interesting to
Dude,
see if you already changed a
it's
perspective on
it's happening every day. Like I went on a walk with my neighbor
okay.
and he dabbles in some professional work where he's making creative assets using some AI tools. And so that's literally what he does. Uh, and we were having a whole conversation. We were walking his dog.
Where were
We're-
you walking?
Deb's Park, you know where Deb's Regional
No.
Recreational Park is?
Share.
Uh, East LA, well, East Side, excuse me. I don't want to say East LA. That's a specific place. Um, but East Side, I guess it's sort of Montecito Heights, Highland Park,
Oh,
Lincoln
okay.
Heights.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
pretty close to where I live. It's nice because if you walk up the backside, you get to this man-made pond that has turtles and fish and stuff. It's very nice.
Oh,
Yeah,
I want to go check this out.
Deb's is good.
Is it
Um,
before you get to Huntington?
oh, way before.
Way
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's much closer to Highland Park down or Chinatown. It's near Mount Washington.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Oh, I know where you're at now.
yeah, yeah. Okay, how did we get there? We were okay, so
You went on a
Ari,
walk
yeah,
with
Ari
your
is my
boy.
neighbor. He works in this field. We had a whole chat on this walk about the way that he is and isn't able to successfully develop video using some AI tools
Okay.
with different types of seeds. Like, is he starting with video content? Is he starting with a prompt? Is he starting with a picture? Is it a combination of all of those things? And he's able to do that. And then all of that conversation was happening while OpenAI was in the middle of rolling out this Sora. I think it's called Sora. Maybe I'm getting the name wrong, but
Text to video.
yeah, text to video. It's literally rolling out while we're having this conversation. It's and so yeah, just to our point, our earlier point that it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's not weeks, it's just hours, you know? We should probably check the
The
news.
longer that we sit here, which
Yeah,
hasn't even been that long, you
right.
went from years to
I
weeks
know.
to days to
I'm
hours.
revising.
You're
I'm
just
I'm evolving in front of
It's
yeah.
because you're an artist.
I guess.
I just love how we keep shortening it,
Yeah.
but it's that fast.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, did you follow when, Sam Altman got ousted from
Mhm.
OpenAI?
Not closely, but I saw the headlines.
Every twice a day, there would be news stories
Right.
about how everything's changed
Right.
with that whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's just their management. If
Yeah.
their management acts that way, how is their code release? You know what I mean?
Totally.
You
Yeah, totally. I think it's a reflection of like who we are. AI is like a really good example of who we are right now. Society would like information quickly. They would like it delivered with confidence.
Yeah.
There's a cavalier nature to something like a chat AI, right? If you played
Mhm.
around with it, it's like you ask it a question and it'll just tell you something with confidence. And I think people have been discussing this for a while. It's not a hot take. A lot of times it's sort of wrong or almost right, or maybe it's a subjective comment, but it's being presented as objective, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of an interesting thing. That's how we get our information, right? We ask the question, we get the answer we want, and then we just take it as fact and move on. And so now we have a tool that does that for us in real time. And yeah, I think there's applications for that that can be really helpful and
Mhm.
confirming. I actually weirdly feel good about like therapy applications. I know that that's like kind of dystopian, but I don't know, at least as like a half step into um, like a mental health practice that isn't about a dice roll on a person that they pair you up with on an app.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes like cliches, platitudes, sort of like, I don't know, just like folk wisdom, like these things are they're cliche for a reason, right? You kind of know them in your heart. The idea like you should, keep up with your loved ones and you should make time for exercise
Yeah.
and mindfulness. Like everybody knows these things, but when when you hear them, right,
Yeah.
especially in a setting where you're supposed to be working on yourself,
I got you.
yeah, sometimes I think that that's could be a really good first step.
When you're talking about the relationship, right, and you're thinking about it in that way, we like to self-diagnose. That's
Mm,
why WebMD became so popular, right?
yeah,
Because we could just start searching and coming to our own conclusions, but we could do our own due diligence.
right,
But if there was this sense of a two-way dialogue with the exact same information that's already out there, like on WebMD,
totally.
what would that be like? It would be comforting, would it not?
And it already is. I mean, like we're talking about this like it's a future
Yeah.
application, but like
Yeah, we could do it
we
now.
can do it
Yeah.
now. And yeah, so again, it just reflects exactly what we're already up to, just in real time. So it's like, yeah, I think WebMD is a perfect example. Um, you look at WebMD and you see that it's possible that you're entering cardiac arrest,
Yeah.
and that freaks you out. I look at WebMD and I see that it could be one of a thousand things, so I'm calm. And it's like we look at the same thing and we get a completely different reaction. We feel completely
Yeah.
differently about it. So it doesn't but yeah, I also think it's worth mentioning that I don't really know too much about, AGI and, like, doomsaying
I
AI
got you.
stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not this isn't a place where I'm not listening to those podcasts. And so, um, I can definitely speak a little bit to how it's, touching my world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely don't feel like I'm ready to get poetic about what it means for society or anything like that.
Well, then, this is what I'll do for you. I'll switch up your point of view.
Sure.
So you have the ability to ask questions regarding the data. Let's say it is from WebMD,
Mm,
and that's informing the AI component that you're speaking with,
right.
right? The task side of it. Well, what if you can change the voice? You're like, oh man, I want this information delivered to me in Barry White's voice.
Yeah.
Or if it was Arnold Schwarzenegger's, you're going to be scared as fuck. Because if he said, you could be in a cardiac arrest. I mean, I'm terrible at impersonating, right? But
Yeah.
imagine if he said, it's just doing the AI thing. It's
Yeah.
the same response, but
Yeah.
in a different tone.
Yeah.
You're going to be scared or you're going to be happy. Or did you ever listen to Art LeBeau? Is
Mm-mm.
that so he was, one of the old radio DJs, and he had a lot of the slow jams and
Yeah,
things,
yeah,
but he had such a smooth voice,
yeah,
soft voice.
yeah,
So if you were being told something that was mission critical of your heart,
yeah.
but in this smooth voice,
Mhm.
would you be that scared? You know what I mean?
Of course.
You're
I
not
want all my information I want it all delivered in the appropriate voice, and I don't wanna make that decision either. I want somebody else with all the
Also,
data to
then you want
decide it.
AI to also make that decision
That's
because
right,
it's
yeah.
gonna sense your mood.
Yeah, I asked ChatGPT today, "Are you listening to my voice, or are you analyzing a transcription of the words I'm saying in written form?"
What was the response?
I didn't get a response.
Oh,
I
damn.
don't think it was, like I don't think it wasn't able to answer. I think I literally hit a patch of, like, bad cell reception or
Oh,
something,
gotcha.
but it occurred to me that I was kind of rambling.
Yeah.
I was talking to occasionally, I asked ChatGPT questions because, yeah, I don't know what your experience with, like, Siri or, like, a smart speaker is, but it's, like it's just not fun, and it's not the future we were promised, you know? Whereas, like, if you yeah,
Not
anyway.
yet, but, one of the things I noticed you said,
Yeah, yeah,
and I found it very interesting, and maybe you intentionally said it, maybe it's just the way you already think of it.
yeah.
You keep referring to AI as it,
Yeah.
as its own thing, being even.
I don't know if I feel that way though.
Yeah.
Like I hear that too,
Okay.
and I acknowledge that is how I'm talking about it. But if you ask me to get analytical about it, I want to live in a world where it's just a it's just a turbocharger, or it's just search engine optimization. You know what I mean? I want to. You're right. I'm obviously I've been affected by news and the internet. I've been affected by
Well, it's hard not to be.
totally. But yeah, I think if I was thinking more clearly about it, I would probably categorize it more as like an internet upgrade. It's like going from dial up to a cable modem than some, you know, some energy sphere, some tangible tool, right?
Yeah.
Like it's going to touch every industry, and it's going to touch each aspect of every industry. But yeah, but I don't think it's a consolidated thing. I mean, it's already democratized, right? It's been introduced to us in a way that is in some ways is more open than the way that we received television or, search engines. Like these things weren't given to us to mess with the code. They just existed and we got to use them. In some ways, this is more of an open source rollout. Uh, maybe for better or worse. I don't know
No,
what the implications are there.
it's interesting the perspective you have on that because with the media cycle that we have, right? With social media, user generated content, everything moves so fast, information moves fast. Something this one director had told me once, Catherine Hardwick,
Mm,
she said, the first lie you hear is the one you believe.
mm,
And it's interesting because whether it's right or wrong or it's accurate or not,
mm,
whoever does deliver the information first kind of has a leg up over what other information you can receive.
yeah.
But because of the velocity of the information we're receiving, it's inherently making things at least appear to be more open
Mm,
because we just have so much more of it.
yeah.
But how much, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
We could really go down some
Yeah.
rabbit holes with that.
I know. I really like somebody asked Mac DeMarco about AI, and he said,
Okay.
"I don't know too much about that, but we did have it write some 5-minute stand-up routines for us and perform them around a campfire, and that was great." And I want to be like Mac.
No, no, I got you.
I want to be like Mac.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. What do you think about music as it relates to rights,
Yeah.
digital rights, copyrights, trademarks,
Yeah. Yeah.
intellectual property? Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah. So I guess let's explore it in real time. It's like it's not our first time down this road, right? We've had to sort of analyze the value of borrowing from another musician. I'll
Yeah.
stay in music,
Yeah,
but it
let's stay in
applies to yeah,
music.
we'll stay in music. And we've had to decide what's worth money, what's just straight up not on the table,
Yeah.
what requires the consent of the artist. We've done this all. So if you write a song, that's different than performing a song. If you sample a song, that's different than covering a song. All of these things, they have rules associated with them. So you can cover a song, you just need to inform the artist. They need to be I think technically you still need to mail them a CD of it or something. There's some rules about this, but you can do it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and you can release it. My music business education is too far in the rear view to tell you exactly how it works,
Okay.
but sampling, same thing. We approach it by how many seconds of the sample are we using, um, and that changes the parameters of things. And we do that not just with physical or like not just with recordings, but also with sort of intellectual property too, like the melodies and the lyrics and stuff like that. We make a judgment call and we assign value to that and we make people pay for it. And I don't know that that's the best solution. I think I might have something to say about, stifling creativity or when it is worthwhile and who gets access to samples, because they can be expensive, that kind of thing. But assuming that we've had a productive conversation about that in the
Yeah.
industry and outside of it, then I don't see why we wouldn't have that same conversation surrounding, um, yeah, the future. I mean, we're back to AI, but it's like these tools, it's almost less of a judgment call. And again, not an expert, definitely don't know what the back end of some kind of like computational AI programming looks like. I have no idea. But my assumption is that if the if the model or the program, whatever it is, if it's borrowing from data that it learned, then it knows where that data came from and it knows who it's assigned to.
Yep.
And I don't really see why that can't just be transparent and then sort of involved in the mechanics of paying people.
It should automate that process, that
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
Because do you think would you have hoped AI would have stepped in when Robin Thicke was wanting to use Marvin Gaye and Blurred Lines?
Yeah.
Or was it I forget, was it White Room was sampled as part of, Dua Lipa's?
It sounds like we're in waters. You might know more than me about this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these legal battles that I'm sure happen all the time,
Yeah.
right? It's like, what do? We sit in a room, we pay people to sort of like listen and argue and debate it. My mind goes right to Queen and Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, yeah.
Ding 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 ding. Right?
Oh, so since and sorry to interrupt you, so think about TikTok.
Yeah, yeah,
How many mashups are there,
yeah. Right.
right?
It's the
And
whole
that
art. It's like the art form. That's the art form.
it is.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, I hear Bee Gees mixed with 50 Cent, and I'm just hyped.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, so I'm just curious to get your opinion on how you see that being generative, right?
Yeah.
Because somebody put that together,
Mm-hmm.
or did they? Now that I have that question, I've
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of posed it out there.
Oh yeah. Sure.
A lot of these mashups that are on TikTok, are they assembled by an artist of some sort?
Yeah. I mean, I think both things are real, right? Neil
Yeah.
Cicierega is out there making like the bet. Like anytime somebody sends me, and I do have friends that will send me like, listen to this Eminem song in the style of the Beach Boys or something, and I'll
Yeah.
be like, listen to this man homemade, way better song by this artist Neil Cicierega, where he's taken the Applebee's theme song and turned it into like the hottest track you've ever heard. Like, I do feel like we're so good at hearing like machine artistry versus like human artistry that it's like as quickly as the party tricks are rolling out, they're becoming not art to us. They're just becoming party tricks. So it's like happening in real time, right? So anyway, all that to say, where there's a mechanism to easily identify ownership and where something was sort of not just influenced but literally taking, um,
It's provenance.
then I don't see why we
Yeah.
wouldn't go a little bit overboard. And then the flip side to that is like I don't think it should get in the way of the creative process because like a subtle change in YouTube rights handling where they decided, okay, instead of just taking videos down, we're going to allocate some of that ad revenue to the people whose music are in them. There's a lot to debate there. I don't think that the entire value of a YouTube video is the song that you put behind it, but certainly there's some, and allowing creators to show off, do their art, make their videos, do their performance, um, and letting that rights holding sort of conversation happen without getting in the way of that release, I think it's pretty sick.
What you're talking about, it's interesting because YouTube, for instance, you can use a catalog of their music
Mhm.
if that just resides on YouTube.
Right.
So let's say coming from skateboarding.
Mm,
Skateboarding and music is amazing.
mm,
When I was growing up, it helped identify my personality because I love skateboarding. But then the soundtracks that were playing were introducing me to music that I'd never heard before
right.
because we didn't have Spotify and things like
Mm,
that. So, but now you're able to you could use the Rolling Stones or Metallica or different, big bands on your YouTube video, as long as it only resides
Mm,
on YouTube,
yeah.
used in that context because they have created that world for it.
Yep.
But even what you were talking about earlier made me think about, you ever seen The Life Aquatic?
Yeah.
So that soundtrack, the majority of it is done with, Sue George,
Sue George.
right?
Yeah.
But you could, since there's enough performances from Sue George,
Mm,
you could ask, an AI, an LLM, if it has enough of that data within it to task it using a large language model to say, even if Sue George hasn't covered the song,
mm,
say play in the style of Sue George, let's say it's Suffragettes. Well, he's probably done all Bowie. I don't
mhm,
even know why, but let's just say it's Doja Cat,
mhm.
Paint the Town Red in the style of Sue George.
Right.
I feel like, okay, he would do that
Mhm.
himself, like physically play it, record it, and everything.
Yeah.
But what if he actually utilized AI to do that?
Yeah, I think I okay, so it transparency is what's interesting here, right?
Yeah,
Because the I think the implication here is that the whatever the end goal is, whatever the deliverable is,
yeah,
has inherent value based on the way it sounds and feels and stuff like that. But that's never ever been the case ever. It's like the only thing we assign inherent value to is like commodities or like diamonds or something, right? It's like you can
yeah.
those are the things that have like just a written on paper value. Everything else is some kind of weird subjective value. And so you're right that like obviously the tools are going to do a super good job, but like one person, one microphone, like at the front of a state, right? Still the most powerful tool we have. No question about it. It's like the the people are showing up for a human being, and I think that we will get better and better and better and better at identifying artistry, even with those tools, even using them, leveraging them as all the time, using them constantly in every part of the workflow. We will still be able to tell which ones have like a human touch and are coming from a creative brain that we really identify with and we think is like, oh, that's cool. I've never heard that before. Um, and so yeah, I don't get worried necessarily, but I think part of that is privilege. Like I don't think I have to because there's a lot of worried people in my bubble too. Like I'm and
Yeah,
I don't just mean out there on the internet or whatever. I'm not on like Twitter, reading doomsayer type discourse. It's not that,
or
right?
X.
Yeah, I
No, I know, it's
never
just
heard
what
of it.
we all call it Twitter
Never heard of
still,
it. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's so funny.
yeah, yeah. And so yeah, so it's like that conversation is happening. I think there might be some other ones that would also be interesting to have, which is why this is nice because I do like tools. Ever since I was a kid, I like software. I like computers.
Yeah.
This has been sort of my zone. And so yeah, I don't want to sit here and talk about like um, uh, the the nightmare of artists losing their ability to contribute in a world where machines are better at making art than us. Because I don't actually think that that's the scary part. I think the scary part is way more centered around like security, identity, that kind of stuff.
It
Is like,
seems like you're talking about manifesting our own destiny, so if we're leaning into the positive side of things, it's
mhm,
almost we're leaning more into how we can use it as a utility and a tool as opposed to all the
right.
the negative.
But also giving focus and probably subsequently money
Yeah, yeah.
and potential success to the parts of this thing that I think are fun and interesting instead of right, it's like we have a cultural conscience
Yeah.
that aims and allocates attention to stuff. And
So
if yeah, and
it's true,
if we
yeah,
don't get
stuff.
excited about the parts of it because it's coming, right? It's already
Yeah.
here. And so if we don't get excited about the parts of it that are cool and we stay super super focused on the parts of it that are like nefarious, then yeah, I feel like that's what we'll get nefarious stuff
Yeah.
because everybody will know about it and they'll keep iterating on it.
Well, plus, for some reason, and this is not the first time this has happened,
Mm,
every evolution, innovation, the incumbent tries to put it in the same model
right.
as what was done previously.
Yeah.
So they look at AI and they go, okay, how does it going to work in our existing revenue model? And
Mm,
it won't. It's the same way when LimeWire, Napster,
mm,
all that came out
yeah.
and people started downloading. It wasn't a situation where it's like, okay, how do we make it work within our old model? It's like, no, 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 you don't. There's a whole new model now.
Right.
The David Geffen documentary and even Defiant ones, they both kind of talked about how the models just completely changed after that happened, right?
Totally. Yep.
So when you're talking about this, a lot of it is just the old guard incumbents, doesn't even have to be old, just the incumbents, the
Yeah.
ones that are there then now with the business model for it,
Mm.
they're just like, "Well, how do we fit it into this model?" It's like, "Well, you're gonna have to redo the model."
Yeah. Yeah, I think the like the analog for this stuff
Yeah.
is it's not there's never like a one-to-one comparison, but one thing's for sure, like rapid change does have the ability to leave some people out, right? It's
Yeah.
like we don't train folks fast enough to, like keep people working in times of like major technology shift. And so there are some serious losers in those equations. And I think being sensitive to that and being mindful about like how it's going to affect people's work is super, super valid. And I really hope that those conversations are happening amongst people who kind of know more about like labor rights and opportunity rights for people than I do. Because yeah, I'm just like a beat maker who
Was
so occasionally people ask
well,
questions.
when you think about
Yeah,
that and you're
right.
talking about being able to just go and create, look at
Yeah,
Jason Schwartzman with
yeah,
Coconut Records. He jokingly says that he did it all in his garage or
mm,
in his basement on GarageBand.
right.
He put all the Coconut record. I really like this stuff,
Yeah,
but he did it all just real simply because he had access to the tools.
yeah. Man, I can't even tell you. It's got to be like 10 years ago. I was asked to DJ a private party, and right before I was meant to go up on stage and play some music,
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh yeah, we forgot to ask you. Would you like to be a part of a panel that we're going to do before your set?"
Okay.
And the questions were about how AI is influencing music. This was so long ago, and I was sitting next to a bunch of like technologists, people who are working at startups, and this is a very San Francisco type of experience.
Okay. Okay.
And uh, they were passing a microphone down, and each person was taking their turn to say the way that like artificial intelligence was going to have an impact on music. And I remember it got to me, and I, I was just like, I don't think it will. I think maybe it's definitely just still gonna be a guy with a microphone at the front of a stage in front of a sea of people, and maybe that's gonna be, like, the most culturally impactful, like, version of music that we ever see, and it's fun to think about that comment, like, then and now because certainly that was before a lot of
Yeah.
these interesting tools were out there. Um, but also my mindset has changed too. I think I was kind of responding in not in a vacuum, but in a very contextual place where it was like, I felt like I needed to speak up or something,
Oh, like you're standing up for
j
the
just
artists.
because there was, like, this wave of people, and I didn't even at that time, I didn't really know that there was so much energy and money going into making this stuff. I mean, these guys were probably all at the forefront of some of the tools that we take for granted now,
Yeah.
and they sounded crazy to me. They sounded like brainwashed, and looking back on it, it's not that I was just stepping into their community,
Yeah.
and I didn't really know anything about it, and I still kind of feel like I don't. Um, so yeah,
Like anything else, it takes work
yeah,
to do your due diligence, right?
yeah, yeah, definitely.
All right. So I got another question for
Yeah,
you regarding all things future forward, how you
sure.
see the future. How do you see musical experiences? Let's say it's events or the way people can experience music in a live setting. How do you see that changing
Mm,
as we move forward? Because now we have more access to things.
yeah,
After the pandemic, people do they're voraciously craving
yeah,
interaction with humans. Even though we have this hyper digital way of communicating now,
yeah,
live events are crushing.
yeah. It's interesting. I think there's parts of this sort of monster in some way. First of all, I just want to say out loud that like it is, and I have some friends who have been sort of speaking this out at every opportunity that they get to. It is not a given that music has value. It doesn't have any inherent value. It's valuable because people choose to listen to it and choose to consume it
Yeah.
and choose to interact with it and the artists that make it and stuff. And so, like, there's sort of a little movement of gratitude in saying that out loud that I definitely did not. I don't feel like I was at the forefront of, but I want to join in just because it's like, yeah, it's an art form that has largely unchanged in like a really, really, really long time, especially the way we kind of consume it,
Yeah.
and that kicks ass. Most things don't stick around like this. Most art mediums are like, they're ebbing and flowing. They come in for a minute, maybe they go. Some of them persist and stand the test of time. But yeah, I just think it's an interesting thing that we're still sort of consuming music the way
Yeah.
that we have before, and I feel super lucky to participate there. But anyway, um, yeah, to your question, like I think there's a kind of an old guard and sort of like the top dog. Let's call them AAA. class of artists and performers
Okay.
where I don't see like major changes happening anytime soon. I think there's like
Like a Taylor Swift?
sure, yeah,
Okay.
yep, yeah. I think like I think it's news when something like a little bit augmented happens in that universe, and especially with like the structure of the business or whatever. But like the performance itself, I think it's like it's kind of working, right? People are paying for those tickets. Those types of shows are usually described as life changing. Like there's the art is
Yeah.
meeting the commerce, and they're everybody
Yeah.
seems to be really happy in that world. Where I think things get super interesting, and where I know I want to participate,
Yeah.
and where I really want to live, and I want to affect, I want to participate, and also I want to roll my friends into that participation and people I don't know. The place that's interesting for me is when you sort of like chunk down a few tiers and you
Yeah.
get into those artists who have much smaller and more niche platforms. I think that the I think that is a really good space for some innovation. And um, yeah, my feeling is that that model that we sort of seek to romanticize and follow the structure of a tour or a performance that looks like a Kendrick Lamar show
Mhm.
or an AC/DC show, right? These are just like time tested, major rock influenced performances. Everybody's on their feet, huge venues, sell as many tickets as you can, fly to the next city, do it again. That that model is definitely kicking ass for some people. When we talk about that space that I'm interested in, it's not so good. It's not particularly efficient, right? So it's not efficient financially, and it's not. I don't think it's emotionally efficient either. I think it's like,
Interesting.
yeah. I mean, I think that,
So
yeah,
describe what it is you're wanting to do because it does come across as abstract
yeah,
when you're talking about it right now.
yeah,
Like
for
where
sure.
you want to participate, what you're looking to create.
Yeah, sorry, we're starting with the philosophy, but
No,
like,
no,
yeah,
no, I completely understand.
yeah. So, specifically, I think it's interesting to mess around with the idea of artists who don't tour as much just right off the bat. So, moving around is expensive, especially if you move gear.
Yeah.
And the incentives are, my
No, no,
brain
it's a
just
good word.
took a little,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, the incentives are about if becoming hyper efficient on the road, and so I don't think it's. I think like the cultural movement of electronic dance music, which I definitely have been a part of and sort of built the beginnings of my career on. They were particularly efficient, right? It's like most people were out there, one or two guys, couple of flash drives, hop on an airplane, and you could go somewhere, right? And then hopefully the rest of the show sort of is waiting for you there.
Mhm.
And so that when I first went out, that just meant there was like some lights and hopefully some good sound, and then eventually there was sort of like a wave of every venue needing $1 million LED wall, and that was like really convenient if you were showing up with some visuals, and maybe the promoter or the venue even provides like a VJ or a lighting director there, maybe not. Um, and so these were kind of like the parameters for uh, creativity with your performance. And again, I'm talking about a pretty niche world,
Mhm.
but it's the one I know, and it's the one I did all of my touring inside of. And so my feeling is that when it came time to turning that sort of crazy labor of love, hobby, that privileged opportunity into work,
Yeah.
into something where you could hopefully sustain yourself doing, because that is a transition point, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, all of your incentives were about everything was about scaling down how many people and how many tools you were moving around the world, so that you could try to eke out just like a little bit um, of a margin. Um, and so yeah, so the hypothesis and the feeling I have is that like it is sort of a privilege of the platform of like the big, huge fan base for it to make economic sense to send people all over the place. I don't even feel like I need to explain that. That's just like just sit with that for a second. It's like
Well,
putting things and people on airplanes every day is expensive.
so to give a little bit of context, at least from my point of view, is
Yeah.
we've ran musical tours.
Right.
We've run experiential tours. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you don't know until you've done one
Right.
or even several that you really like, damn,
Yeah.
this is a lot of work. Simple things, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes your backline plugging in could be a challenge sometimes.
Definitely.
You know, you show up at a spot and they don't even have 220. It's all 110,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
honestly, like we this isn't even a place where I feel like I do feel like we did a little bit of experimentation. So I was in a band called the M Machine, and we
The what?
the M Machine,
The M machine, okay.
and we, before we had any right to do so in like the normal course of things. I don't know that there's a normal, but like definitely before there was demand for it, we wanted to be on the road with 3 people, uh, and a bunch of gear. Specifically, we wanted to tour around with this light sculpture that we built at home and we're really proud of, and it was like a big part of the show. Put it up on stage, and one of us, Andy, my old bandmate, he would perform it on stage. That was like his contribution to the show, was he would sing live and he would also perform this light instrument. It was kind of interesting. And in order to bring that stuff around, you can imagine the amount of money that we lost. That it was in custom road cases. We had to ship it ground, so we could only take as many shows as we could get it to the next stop in, because we certainly couldn't fly any of that stuff. Although that's not uncommon. Um, and yeah, eventually it just became prohibitively expensive, and I think um, I think that like our switch to just leaning on and relying on the tools that were going to be available to us at the venue, uh, and then again finding even that, still 3 people, still all of our keyboards and our gear and our
Yeah.
mics and everything, still too expensive. And then sort of deciding again, okay, we better make it more efficient. We lost a band member, we switched to flash drives, and we DJ'd around the world and stuff, and that performance became uninteresting to us, and it became less exciting.
So, to help educate those who
Yeah, yeah,
may not understand,
yeah,
if they were just hearing, "Oh, we have a sculpture that we use for our performance,"
yeah.
they're thinking, "Is that really gonna change your performance?" You know what I if I'm playing,
Yeah,
that's what it kinda sounds like
totally.
sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't know, so explain it. What is it about something like that that changes the experience of hearing
Yeah.
music
Well, okay,
in a live environment?
most importantly, and I
Yeah.
keep coming back to like the human expression, right?
Okay.
That's the thing that I think we were very unconsciously, right? We're talking about a bunch of like mid 20-year-old boys who didn't know anything about anything, but the unconsciously, I think all it did was provide an experience that was unique to us. We knew how to build that thing. We knew how to, source LEDs and work with microcontrollers and build an instrument. And I say we, most of this came from Andy. Andy was my bandmate who now, coincidentally, is working at Google on large language models. Go figure, right?
That's so rad.
I know.
Go
And
Andy.
yeah, he's killing it. And so we had this thing that was unique to us, and it wasn't that that show is somehow better, or like,
Yeah.
our visuals are better. It's just that it was something that we knew how to do, and it was like a creative expression coming from us. And I think that's why it connected with people, not enough to justify the tour apparently, right?
Well, maybe enough people didn't know about it.
Could be.
That's another side of touring that most people, you don't think about it until you have to.
Mhm.
You set everything up, you've
Yeah.
booked everything, you got everything, your music, everything's solid. Then you're like, "Oh, shit, we gotta get people there.
Yeah.
Do they even know we exist?"
Yeah. Yeah, I was just talking to a friend about this. There's this really funny sweet spot when you're booking talent for like a dance night. If you're doing like electronic music, you're mostly just booking DJs, right? You have a small nightclub, maybe it's an after hours thing, whatever it is.
Yeah,
There is a sweet spot where you really want to avoid. And I think we occupied this for a little while. I have some
okay.
guilt associated with it. It's an artist who has the expectations that all marketing, all sales are going to be handled by the promoter in the venue,
Oh,
but doesn't have the fan base yet, um, for that to work. And so it turns out that actually the artists are probably the biggest sales channel that they have, right? The
yeah,
biggest marketing channel they have is the artists themselves. But you know, get to a certain point, people have automated enough of your jobs, and they've sort of like um, want to show off and make sure that you're interested in coming and playing their party, whatever it is. You don't get a ton of pushback if you don't go super hard on the marketing. And
yeah,
so, yeah, above that, where the tickets sell themselves, right? Or there's other people working on people's socials, so like the marketing is sort of built in. And below that, where you have incredible local artists who hustle and put on great shows, but always take on that responsibility of being a part of the show and being a part of the marketing stuff, that also can work really well and can be really efficient, right? But it's that middle ground where I think, I saw a lot of people sort of fall off. Like, so the expectations weren't really matching the reality of their platform.
So where do you see
Mm.
music experiences going in the future?
Well, we talked about like this zone where I think that like an interesting place to play is
Yeah.
in that zone where you sort of like step down a couple of tiers to people who have smaller platforms, but I'm specifically interested in, artists where it's like there are a lot of people who they are their favorite artists, right? So maybe it's a little bit different from somebody who just has like, really good streaming numbers, or has been able to support specific other artists. But it's like there are certain artists where it's like they may not have a huge platform, but there's a good critical mass of people who that is totally
Yeah.
their favorite artists in the world. Um, I think like an opportunity to stay home, and perform often at home, like the way that like a working artist might work at a club in a city, back in like the 60s and 70s, is kind of an interesting concept. It's just a hypothesis, but it's like,
Okay.
yeah, it's where my brain goes. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that's interesting. One is, it just sounds like a lifestyle that some people would stick with for a little bit longer. Some people who maybe have had enough of the road and decide to hang it up and go do something else, but who that makes me sad about, because I want them to keep pushing
Yeah.
their music, if it serves them anyway. Um, and so that's from the artist's perspective. From the viewer's perspective, from the fan's perspective, I feel like there's an opportunity for super, super different shows, right?
Yeah.
Like super custom, super narrative based, if that's your thing, and an opportunity to grow a reputation and a platform locally, um, over time. And
Mhm.
so the stakes are changed too, and the math changes too. Like if you look into the marketing budgets of the big shows that can't fail, the margins end up getting slimmer than you'd think they would be, because they cannot not have butts and seats.
Yeah.
And so usually that's a problem that money can solve. And so you just keep spending it, right, until all those seats are filled up.
Yeah.
Um, if the stakes are a little lower and the show has integrity and it's awesome, then you give people the opportunity to spread the word, and they're not gone the next day. And of course, there's downsides, right? So the downside is, uh, maybe there's something to, uh, 5,000 people, a sea of them, anonymity. Let me try it again.
Anonymity?
Anonymity.
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 And now I swear I know how to say it, but now I'm so
I
confused.
know. I have no idea how to say the
Anonymity.
word. Thank you. Maybe there's something
Yeah.
to that,
That'll
right?
be in the show notes.
Okay.
We're gonna have the pronunciation
Somebody
link
somebody help me out. Can I call a friend? Anyway, so maybe there's something to that, right? Maybe you can't achieve that. So maybe it's an art form that's
Yeah.
like is for a specific type of artist, or maybe we have no idea. Maybe some people would take that smaller, more custom, more intimate venue and they would do something totally anonymous. Maybe they turn the lights off. Maybe you'd have to row a boat to your show, and then by the time you get there, you're so sweaty that you're having a whole different experience you couldn't have had if you're going to a big concert. Point is, I just think that there's a bunch of creativity there that, can't really be accessed in that typical concert setting. And so it's kind of fun to just ask the question, like, what would you do
Yeah.
if somebody gave you a box and they told you you could be there, night over night, like a residency, play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is interesting now that you put it that way.
Mm.